guess I'm gonna follow your lead and just turn mine off, but we might need it later when we talk about things. Hi, Rosemary.
Hi, buddy. Long time no see.
Long time no see.
Okay, we're rolling. Oh, Kyle is out of town.
And is Jeremy?
I haven't heard.
Well,
Oh, maybe I did hear. Maybe he's not here.
we could just proceed and call the meeting to order. I was not able to attend the last meeting, so I need someone to let me know minutes are okay and approve the minutes.
I had some changes that I asked to be made. Eve, did we make those changes?
Yes.
Okay, so as far as I'm concerned, if those changes were made, I'm okay with the minutes. I'd actually.
Because I don't know what those changes
Oh,
were.
there was just a couple sentence structures, and then I didn't understand some of the acronyms that were used, and I was wondering if they were correct, and maybe I corrected one acronym, UGS instead of USGS.
Great.
I corrected that one, and then you had thought that HSA was supposed to be HISA, but it was in fact short for Hydrologic Systems Analysis, which is Ken Combs' company.
Okay. As opposed to the,
As opposed to the hydrologic and environmental system analysis.
yes. So other than that, there was one sentence that didn't quite make sense to me, and I think she worked on that too, but moving on, I have.
Okay, so we have a motion to approve the minutes with some minor adjustments to the acronyms. Do we have a second?
Sorry, it's so tiny.
You don't have a second at this point in time.
For a second. Sorry, I think people are reading. I'm
Yeah.
giving
Okay.
patience. Second from John. All in favor?
This is your pin, right?
Opposed?
Aye.
Okay. So we have citizens to be heard. We have Terry from Green County Council is here, and then staff members. So anything you want to talk about this point, or just?
I'm just here to get you.
Okay. So.
We can't promise you that. No.
I'm coming from very low standards.
So we'll move on from citizens to be heard to board and staff reports, and the first item being review of the HSA water budget revision discussion led by Mike Duncan. With possible action below.
30 minutes, I think they were
If that's what.
That's probably one of the most important things we have, Mike.
Yeah, and looking at everything else, I think that's fine. Go for it. You sure you want to limit yourself that way?
So what Chuck's gonna be called version 2 of the water budget. I'm sure. And I read it, we got paid and this good stuff, and kind of summarize where I was at, what I liked and what I didn't like, and that went out in an email where I did most of you guys, I'm not sure if you guys. Work.
Do you have one of these?
It's gonna be really hard if you talk to that part of the room, so maybe you guys should come over here.
So what,
You can sit up here, Terry.
We're gonna look at the board here, Cara.
I know, but we can see it right there too, but if Mike's trying to talk to people behind him and in front of him, this might talk softly. I wanna make sure everybody's here.
And I'll cut the cake, so it'll be like.
Okay, there you go.
so anyway, so what Ken did for you guys, as opposed to what USG is, he defined this particular preliminary water budget area, all right, which is this area that's more or less covers up here in figure 10A. Figure 10A is identical to 10B, with the exception that the one on the left shows springs, which includes both the city's production springs and Scotland Springs, which is mostly production, but he also counts it under the Scotland Spring winter runoff, which the city doesn't do instead. And includes a variety of other miscellaneous springs. The one on the right is production wells, for the most part. And on his numbers, one oversight, which we'll get to later on, is I don't think he picked up the county's wells, which are more or less in the same strata. You know, they're all Glen Canyon wells as well. So if that's correct, I'll look at the numbers here in just a moment, then there's still another outflow. Bottom line of where I'm all headed is I think his single biggest mistake here is to grossly take a wild ass stab at how much groundwater is coming in to the PWP, way out here at surface water and groundwater inflow. The surface water is well known because we've got a couple gauges farther on downstream, one above and one below the shady diversion. But he just makes it, when I say a wild stab, I mean that he just must know something about the fractures up there. And he said, well, I think that there's fractured rock, 50 meters by 20 meters, whatever the numbers were, and he assumed certain hydraulic conductivity, so many feet per day. From that, he can calculate how much water, groundwater, goes into this area. And at first sight, when he added up the numbers, this looks reasonable. Right? But if you start separating out surface water from groundwater, it doesn't add up. It's not even close. And I'm taking advantage of the fact that surface water, averaged over the years, hasn't balanced out in pre or post condition scenarios. Right? Because you don't see any lakes forming up there. Okay? And the creek's not drying up. So your net divergence or convergence into this area has got to be zero. So, average over a period of a few years, average over seasonal fluctuations and so forth, it had better come out zero. That kid didn't even look at that, all right, because he added surface water and groundwater together and got that to balance. He didn't look at the two individual components. And he could have, all right, because he's got Blanchard's report back from 1985, which he used for other purposes. So,
I want the piece with Memorial Fasting.
You're so mean.
It's for Eve, you know.
so here we go. So, Eve, thank you so much for making the printouts. So, what you'll find is that there's 3 pages in this spreadsheet. The first one I was able to report because it gave me Ken's numbers with a few simple mods that I made to it. The second one is my elaboration on that. The third one is auxiliary calculations related. So the very top part of the first page is this label Cole's budget as reported. So you can see here. And basically all I did was I just copied his work right out of the report right into here. And it's just my convention to use orange numbers for colored cells in general to represent hard numbers that are typed in as calculated by some sort of formula. So you can go back and double check it all, but it should match up very nicely. He has a group of terms that are water into the PWB, and another group of terms that are water out. So the in terms include things like direct runoff, recharge, groundwater.
For my clarification, I think I understand this table completely, but I just want to make sure I do. He has the line number 12 there, Mill Creek inflow above the location of the Sealy diversion. So he's using that as the water that is above the entrada coming in. And then when he's talking about direct runoff from streams and recharge, where he got those 2 numbers we can talk about, but he's integrating the amount of precip over the area below Mill Creek, where the Mill Creek comes below the entrada. And so that was a little confusing to me where the 2 different numbers.
Great question, yeah. So restate.
Can we show the map for a second, and I'll actually do that. The map. Can we go back 1 page? So he's got this inflow coming in up here. All of this stuff he did not look at runoff into streams and the recharge.
Right, you basically fundamentally calculated, he used
Yeah. It's just the area.
base to calculate precip as a function of altitude, and then he subdivided this whole area in a bunch of different zones. You got two. Zones are characterized by whether it's solid matrix material, whether it's fractured material, and so on. So a variety of different kinds of zones. In fact, there were 5 major kinds of zones. And from that, he calculated the infiltration rate, okay, which leads to recharge. And in addition to that, there is a rheatotype from, we're talking about water coming in now. And then the other, so basically precip equals recharge plus direct runoff plus evaporation, those 3 terms. Water that comes in breaks up into 3 parts. It either goes into the ground, it goes into the surface water, or it evaporates. And he ended up, what I calculated was a net infiltration rate, by the way, of 18%, which I was talking to my guys, I don't know if you guys know Jeff Freedy, he's an old friend of mine. He cut his teeth out in southeast Utah doing this exactly this kind of. I talk to him every now and then, and he is very professional courtesy. He's not about to get into any kind of serious argument, professional argument with Mr. Cohn, but he did say that in his experience over his career, the last 2, 3, 4 decades, that recharge rates of 3 to 6% are more common. He did a lot of his work in southwest Utah and right there. So anyway, that's kind of a high number. We might ask Ken to defend that, but that's not really what I want to talk about here.
What number is that?
Yeah.
18%.
Infiltration.
And then 18% recharge rate.
So water in the spring going into the groundwater? That,
It just says that 18% of the rain that
okay.
falls ends up in the ground.
On the rock.
Not on the rock, infiltrated in the rock, into the water table underneath.
Yeah, the percentage that goes, that lands on the rock, that goes into the rock.
Yes.
Correct. And more importantly, through the partially saturated layer, the unsaturated zone, gets into the saturated zone, which is by definition water. So,
Okay, well, I also save most of the questions for later.
no, you can ask anything you want.
So, what kind of surface would that include then? I mean, if you're talking good soil, it's gonna, a lot more is gonna be infiltrated than bare rock. So what is Ken and Jeff saying for, I mean,
He's got an appendix, a long, a giant spreadsheet, little tiny letters at the far back, one of the appendices, in which he breaks it all up into the 30-some odd zones. And he has, based on the type of matrix material, whether it's covered, it's all lots of talking about, we gotta go up the slick rock area, that's a good place to look, I mean, all that. Where it's kind of roly-poly, he says the water, first of all, will run off from the top of the hill, run down to the bottom of the valley. And if there's no loose sand at the bottom of the valley, it will evaporate pretty quickly. But oftentimes there's an inch or 2 or 3 or more of sand out there. That sand is saturated. And the sand tends to hold it in, and gives it a better chance to infiltrate.
Is this the table you're talking about?
That looks like, yes,
So that is,
part of it.
that's Ken's,
that's what he's talking about. Yeah, that's what he's talking about.
okay, but I'm trying to understand what Jeff's criticism is, because it seems like Ken's numbers are variable depending on what's on the surface and so on. So if Jeff can just, in a conversation, just say 60, that Ken's numbers are too high, for what?
But I think what I heard Mike say is that this report comes out with an average of 18% for the watershed. And
The
that
report,
that's,
what the sheet actually, he doesn't calculate 18%
Right.
evaporation. What he does tell you is he gives you the total area,
Right.
you've got 28,000 acres. He gives you the total precip.
Right.
And he gives you a total recharge rate.
so that if you make a
Okay, so what I'm hearing is that,
Wait, let him finish.
I think we're getting bogged down in something.
that's what I was gonna say. What I'm hearing,
Get the big picture before we get back to, let me concentrate on the big stuff here, and then we go back to the stuff later on.
Thanks for answering my question.
go to the next one.
All right, so again, that's Ken's original report. All right, so underneath that, all I did next was I just split his budget into surface and groundwater terms. All right, so now you're gonna see 4 terms. Here's water, surface water coming in, groundwater coming in, surface water going out, and groundwater going out. So the first 2 terms are in. These are exactly the same thing. I haven't changed a thing. So we still got direct runoff, the streams, we got Mill Creek inflow. That's the only 2 surface water terms in there. In terms of groundwater now, we got the recharge. That's the result of the precip in the area, not external to it, in the area. And the groundwater underflow, what Ken called it, at the Upper Mill Creek boundary. That's the one I was talking about, that is a wild stab in the dark. And in terms of output terms now, same deal, we got the consumptive use, riparian vegetation, also called phreatophytes. Jeff tells me, by the way, phreatophytes by definition means vegetation whose roots reach down extensively through the partially saturated area. And get near the water table, we don't have that carbon. As opposed to shallow and stuff like treating my burn. And then what comes out, so we got the phreatophyte consumption, we've got the diversion of Sheely Dam, which in the pre-development case is 0, and in the post-development case, averaged over the years is 3,700 acre feet per year. Same old numbers. And then we got the Mill Creek outflow. Again, those are the same numbers that Ken put in his report, I've just totaled them up differently.
No, yeah.
The consumptive use by riparian vegetation is phreatic and should be.
That's a great question. We're going to get to that in a moment. You have to look ahead a little bit. I'm trying, later on, I'm creating a mechanism, another way of balancing the budget. To do that, I had to split source of phreatophyte water, and some of it coming from the ground, and some of it coming from the stream. And that's where it grows. I mean, you look at aerial photographs, you see a lot of green boundaries, as it were, right along the streams. And the classic diagrams of groundwater flow always show groundwater coming down a gradient, and when there's it cuts through a stream and so forth, it typically tends to come back up. And so there's a water flow sort of curving up and flowing into the stream. That's why the stream gains at that point, because you get. So I asked Jeff about that. I said, well, do I model this as phreatophytes is all coming from groundwater, or do I model it all coming from surface water? And he didn't really know, but he thinks some of both. So what I did, I'll get to it. There is a fudge factor in what I've done. We're going to get to that in just a
And
moment.
I've got one more question on this topic too, that's kind of bothered me from the beginning on this assumption. There's 2 parts to this, and you may not know the answer, and you don't have to get into it if you don't. The first is, does the 2.9% riparian area over the 28,000 acre watershed, where does that come from? Does that come from an actual veg map, or does that come from?
No, it comes from the table as a pen.
I know it's, but where does he get that?
Oh, where did he get it
Because
from?
if
Well,
he's,
that's a great
you
question.
know,
I don't know.
because is that from an actual vegetation map?
Estimate of some model.
You know, some other modeling, and the second piece to that is, what's the source? I mean, because there's not great veg maps of this area is the reason I'm asking that. Because right now I'm making a veg map for Mill Creek because there's not a good one that exists. The other question related to that is the basis for the acre feet used by that phreatophytic. I'd like source of, like some citation of why he's coming up with this number. I'm not saying I
So
don't
it's in-
agree with it, but I'd like to see the actual study that that comes from.
It is in here.
Yeah, we can answer both those questions. Yeah, citation is in there, plus, go ahead, Mark.
Okay, so yeah, so the riparian vegetation was, I think it was mostly DR did. We did, using the aerial imagery.
Okay.
We just kind of traced out an area.
Okay.
I think this is where the vegetation.
Okay, so it's a rough mapping from an aerial image.
It's more accurate than anything else that's out there.
Well, right.
Yeah.
There's some pretty bad maps out there. So is there, I've not had time to put my hands on the paper that gives the rationale for how this number's figured out. Is there a way to get a copy of that? Do you guys have a copy of that I could get somehow?
You mean
The citation?
the rate of consumption by the.
Yeah.
Oh, it's in the.
I know it's cited in there, but I'd like to actually, like, look at more than the citation, but look at the actual
Oh, I don't.
document.
No, I don't know that. I would just Google it, to be honest.
Okay, I'll see what I can do. I don't have access to a lot of things that have paywalls.
The first version had a range, basically.
Right.
So now he's averaged it out to make it easier to follow.
As per the city's request. You guys, we requested that because
Right.
it was very complicated.
Yeah, it was. And that's
So
why
I think that was a great move on your guys' part.
Because to me, that number's pretty important, and I want to make sure that it's based in something.
We'll look for the citation, see if we can find it.
That would be
It's
awesome.
right here, Mulcahy and Blaney's 1945 report.
I know, but what I want to actually get a copy
See
of
the
the report, because I want to understand the rationale.
Oh, I hear you. I
Yeah.
downloaded the lecture and started reading that.
I know, it's great bedtime reading. It's great bedtime reading, but I just want to, because one of my concerns, and we don't need to belabor this, but one of my concerns is, okay, we just cut down on cottonwoods and we suddenly have 5,000 acre feet of water, which I know is not true, but I want to make sure that that doesn't become, I want to make sure that that doesn't become a like a reason that people are wanting to cut down on trees.
Well, Carl, that's a great point, but I don't want to digress on.
No, I agree.
You just mentioned an important topic coming up soon in the future. I'm not going to tell Emily, what our best, between the two studies, our best estimate of safe yield is. But of the water that we're not using that could potentially be available for development, where is it? What form? Is it surface? Is it ground? How are we doing without infringing on somebody else's rights? What sort of infrastructure is needed? What sort of cost is needed? How much of this is reasonable?
Right.
That's-
And that's, so we can put that aside for a later conversation, and maybe I can get with Chuck on that to find that.
Actually, I remember we had 2 or 3 different studies.
Right.
That he cited.
And I'd like to just, I'll volunteer to read through them and figure out just because I want to make sure I can actually answer the question if I'm ever asked. Of where does this come from? How do we figure this out? Okay, keep going, sorry.
Yeah, no problem. So finally, the last 4 terms are the out, groundwater out, that's the springs, the boundaries, including the Scott overflow, the production spring, municipal use kind of thing. And finally, the domestic consumption use, which are relatively small numbers. We can argue about those numbers, but they're small, so we'll get into them now. All right, so everybody understand that. So this second chart I showed you is basically the first one, nothing has changed except I just separated them out into in, surface, and groundwater. In and out, surface, and groundwater. Only difference.
So Mike, did you say that in reality, because on the out the ground, we don't have the county's numbers from their wells? We're missing a component at this
That's
point in time?
correct. We're going to get to that in a moment.
Okay, thank you, keep going.
I think I know how I figured that because I looked at his well, yeah, well, it's right here. Next, see, it's 1875. Chuck, Eric, Mark, you guys would know. Is that a number that's?
Yeah, that's a reasonable one for the city. 1875 is a reasonable number for the city.
75.
I know, the county, we'll show it to you in a moment, but they got another 1,000, 1,500 acres of wells.
I think you had 1561 or something in there.
Yeah,
That's what the
and
number
I got
you
that
used.
out of a report that, 2017, 2018 report. Because they're pumping down big time on George White and. There's point, I don't think he put that in there, which makes the groundwater imbalance problem. But let's go on, sorry, so, all right, so again, chart 1 was called the original one, this one's the same thing, only split into surface and groundwater components. Now here's the third guy.
Now, aren't you using the balancing term as a number
second chart. The balancing term is that you balance it for the pre-case.
Yeah.
Okay, this guy here, he chose, I see why I'm struggling with this thing. My Windows platform at home goes in the other direction. That's why. Okay. So see this 3841 figure out here? This is direct runoff. That's the number that he balanced. He chose that number to make and equal out in the pre-case.
Right.
And he looked at that number and went, oh, that's reasonable. Well, it might be.
Okay, I guess my point is that that didn't come from data, that was a derived term, according to Ken, that, it's just adding and subtracting the other numbers. It's not really a big number in terms of data.
That's correct. And I calculated, again, with the data of his appendix, that number is 13% of the incident precipitation. So recharge is 18%, direct runoff is another 13%, so that's 31% total between those two terms, which means the other 70% of that, which may not be too far. So now we're just now starting to get to the fun part of this.
And just because we have someone from the public who just walked in, just so you know where we're at, we're going over some stuff Mike has been doing to look at the
Report.
hydrologic report that's going on. So it's a lot of number heavy, confusing stuff. So always get questions.
Is there any extra copies?
I could go make one.
Yeah,
Oh,
I'm writing on mine right now. Sorry.
Starting small.
I can go.
Cool, okay.
So you want to go on?
Yeah, no, keep going. No, I just figured since we actually had a member of the public show up, we might as well acknowledge the fact.
All right, so the third chart on this page, the only difference between this and the one above it is I've added a stream gain from the groundwater term. In other words, it's well known, this is courtesy of Blanchard's work. All right, he calculated it was about 2,600 acre feet per year. Mill Creek stream water that is lost to groundwater. That's what's sourcing our wells and springs, for the most part. And so I added that term in. So again, I got 4 categories of water. The end surface water now, I've got this thing right here, 2,600 gain. So the surface water, gain from groundwater. Oh, okay, no, I got this backwards. My apologies. Mill Creek measured from way above Sheeta, that is to say on the eastern side of the water budget area, measured all the way down to what Ken calls the confluence, the delta, gains 2,600 acre feet. Mill Creek is running heavier at the bottom than it is at the top, despite losing water for the springs and wells. You can get that from Blanchard's, double check that if you want. So that's why this is a positive term right here. So surface water gains as it passes through the PWB.
So you're saying that Ken left that out, is that important?
Yeah, he didn't put it in, he didn't care. Well, now see, but it doesn't change the overall balance, all right, because groundwater out picks up at the same term. I got 2,600 acre feet going in the groundwater. So the overall balance hasn't changed. So now, look at this. I admit I fudged a little bit here. The actual term that Blanchard came up with, which is a very sparse set of readings, but it's better than nothing. Okay, back in 1985, said there was about a 2,600 acre foot gain in Mill Creek from top to bottom. And 2641, that's the number that I chose, that exact value. this number come out 0 in the pre-development case. You still got the original fudge factor in there, 10 postulated, which is this 3,800 acre feet of direct runoff. So there's really two fudge factors in a sense, but all I've done is broken out the terms and I've accounted for the fact that we know, according to Blanchard, the water moves from from the stream, I'm sorry, from the ground into the stream as it passes through. So this looks.
Or he said it was the other way, but he said that it was from the stream into the ground, that's 26.
No, it's from the ground into the stream.
From the ground into the stream. Overall, there are stretches of Mill Creek where it loses. Okay, there's actually two stretches if you look at it carefully, and I'm really glad. It's kind of interesting there. This is another problem what it's doing. If you look at the losing reaches of Mill Creek up above the golf course, the amount of losing water there is not anywhere near enough to satisfy how much we're pumping out wells.
Yes, sir.
You saw that already?
Yeah, that's one of my biggest problems. And we've had a discussion about where the water actually comes from, and
Even if you include, it also loses higher up around the Shiva diversion. And that could have something to do with the Shiva diversion itself. But I don't know, but even counting that, there's still not enough water.
there's still not enough water.
So who's to say that 2641 isn't coming from like other sources of groundwater coming down the tributaries or something, which would then be the surface runoff balancing tournament?
So when Blanchard, according to what the science was, when Blanchard did this, was that he was doing it when it wasn't raining. That was the point.
Blanchard.
Yeah, Blanchard. That's why he did this in October and November, just like the USGS. So he was assuming there's no snow melt, no precipitation. We're in what we would see as a, quote, steady state conditions in November. It's October in this case, but the point being was that there are no inflows along those stream reaches at this point in time.
That isn't really, I mean, to me, the matrix of the rock, the water is moving through the rock at different rates depending on whether there's cracks in it or whether it's just solid rock. So some of it is arriving, even though the rain may have happened 5, 6 months ago, it will be arriving in the stream at the time Blanchard did his study. So it's kind of gray, but I don't necessarily agree with Tony. That it's just a steady state.
Well, I think we need more data.
Yes.
But it's better than nothing. It's a big question mark in that there, so there you go. So let me move on, if I may, to the second spreadsheet. We're getting through the gist of it here. So I'm going to move, so we've got Kansas Reservoir Report, one separated in terms with one correction, which is to account for movement of gaining from groundwater over stream reaches. So, yeah, the stream gains, sure, of course, man. The stream gains as it comes. That's what typically happens. All streams, most of them gain as they flow down the mountain. Smaller.
So let's move on to the next.
Let's move on.
We're going in circles right now.
Okay, all right. Okay. All right, so here there's one final chart.
There's no printout of this one that I got.
Okay, so now we're on to the second page.
I didn't realize it was more than one sheet, sorry. So I didn't print that.
No, that's
part.
fine, just making sure everybody knows, don't look at your.
I'm turning my pages over. 'Cause yes,
Your
yes.
paper won't help you now.
Okay.
Put your pencils down.
All right,
You
well,
can take notes if you want.
where is? So now, in this chart, it's still the same basic chart. Instead of having two cases out on the right-hand side, there are three. I added one late in the game out here. I called it no man-made use at all. It's essentially the same thing as Ken's pre-case, except I think I threw out all wells, for example, and as well as the shaded river. Because in my opinion, if this aquifer is in any kind of steady state, it's gonna, that situation will exist before we start talking about any wells, prior to 1950 or so. So there's three cases out here. The little extra charts out, the little extra columns out here are just auxiliary columns that I put in for my own use. I had a whole pile of incidental calculations, and the balances for each kind of each of these four terms is still there. And there it is for that kind of example. Those of you that haven't used spreadsheets, so then here's a real nifty trick. You click on a cell, and
It'll tell you how you derived it.
yeah, click on the cell, and the formula comes up. And then if you click in the formula, Excel will outline for you the cells that you're referring to. So I'd already found these things anyway. It's a great trick. Whenever you write a formula and you're not sure if you picked up the right cells, it's easy to make mistakes.
Okay, so let's move back to this. I'm sorry, it's great.
So let's go on.
Lesson, but let's stay focused. Sorry, I'm getting lost in the diversions.
Okay, so in the input surface water, the only thing I added in here that Ken failed to add, in my opinion, and he didn't account for in his first charts, the ones we first looked at in here, he showed mesa inflow way up in the kind of top right corner, but it's not in this table, all right? And it's not a negligible source of water. So over here, then I've got this North Fork inflow observed by Blanchard, Rill Creek inflow observed by Blanchard, and then the term that we saw in the previous chart,
So what you're saying is that in this and the one prior to it, phase 1 and phase 2, those three items in pink and then blue in the numbers, North Fork inflow, the Rill Creek inflow, and the gains from groundwater were not included in his numbers. That's what you're saying. And that's a total of around 3,600 acre feet.
okay. So it's a significant amount of surface water. So I added those in for surface water. And there's some other corrections in here having to do, which I won't go over right now, having to do with the fact that ideally you'd be measuring surface water. Edge of the PWB, because it's got precip above them, direct runoff, all that. We'll get into that. That's what all these.
So, sorry, one more question. So, the gain from groundwater over stream reaches, the 2621 number, does not include, because you were saying lower down in Mill Creek, it has more flow than higher up, so you're assuming gains are coming in, or Blanchard is assuming gains are coming in. So you're saying that 2621 does not include the 956 and the 94, and pardon me, I haven't read Blanchard, so I just want to make sure that I'm understanding that correctly. Because that's what this table is telling me, that you're thinking.
That's correct, because North Fork, these two terms, North Fork inflow and the Rill Creek inflow are direct surface water.
Okay, just making sure, but we don't need any out there, just wanted to make sure. So those are basically surface water inflows as opposed to groundwater inflows.
And there are in his diagram, this thing here, but he just didn't put them in the chart.
So Ken doesn't even look at the individual things. This is a boundary study, like what comes in and what goes out. What happens in the middle, he doesn't really deal with. So individual creeks and so on, he doesn't, that's all.
He wants a more
accounting for.
If he wants a more accurate model, he needs to.
Well, that's a point, that's a methodology thing, which you'll have to,
So I think what Eric is trying to say is that when Ken integrated the precipitation over the area, which includes Mill Creek and North Fork, he had that amount in his term for direct runoff to streams that I pointed out at the very beginning.
So that's a part of the 3841.
That's what Eric is saying is in terms of Ken's idea on how us works. He's integrated how much water precipits comes down and runs off, considering some of it goes into vegetation, some of it goes into the ground, and the rest comes out. And the North Fork and Mill Creek would be part of the area where he did that integration.
So basically so that 3841 is water flowing off the mountain, water flowing into North Fork, and water flowing into Rill.
Not flowing off the mountain, below the boundary, all of the North Fork drainage and all of Mill Creek drainage, but not flowing off the mountain. So the flowing off the mountain is measured at the Shealy Tunnel, and that's what his component is what's coming off the
Okay.
mountain.
So,
I was trying to make a point of that earlier.
right, and obviously I didn't get it. So you're saying that 3841 includes that 1,150 of North Fork and Road Creek plus water falling on all this other pink
Red,
and pink stuff.
yes. That would be my assumption at this point.
That's a great idea. Badly misworded, if you want to know, right? If that's the case, but we should ask him.
We should ask him, yes.
Curiously enough, so 3 terms, they add up to about 3,800 feet, okay?
Yeah, they did.
So maybe that's what he meant. We have to,
Excuse me, because that almost, not quite, but almost exactly.
So
actually,
we got the ground.
Okay,
Anyways,
we're
moving on.
getting into 45 minutes, so let's get to the point.
okay, so we're getting to the point. All right, so groundwater.
I'm not opposed, but
And then finally, the remaining term, go ahead. So finally we get down to the bottom line then. So here now we've got a true pre-case, which is the same thing. Groundwater. So I added in GWSSA culinary wells from their culinary water plan in 2016. That's this 1,600 wells. And that's about it. There's no difference between the 3 cases. So the pre-case, so the surface water roughly balances. But the groundwater does not. And it says that, here's my biggest problem, if you don't remember anything else, this is a problem. And I have a solution, not a solution, but I have a suggestion about how to get more information on this. So all 3 cases show negative amounts of groundwater. In other words, there's more groundwater leaving the area than it is coming in. And we may be running a deficit, that's what we're here to find out. And that was the whole point of having the study in the first place. But I don't believe this number. I don't think we're in that shape, but I want to find
well,
out.
and it seems so. What you're saying is that even before human uses, we were running a deficit, because that's what this is telling me. Because you said this first set of columns is pre-people building crap, and the second, and the second set of columns is the 1971 to 2000, and then the third set of columns is 1981 to 2010. So what you're saying with these figures right here is that before we even had people messing with the system, we were running a negative. That seems weird to me.
According to his model, it's best I can correct it for what I think is a problem. That's why I don't believe it.
Okay, well, well, thank you, Mike.
Is there
We got a lot to
more-
talk about still, don't we?
Yeah, is there more to this that we need you to explain, or is this the take home? Is that possibly even before we had people monkeying about with the system, we had a negative, which but more importantly, even if you make that 0, these other 2 still show a significant dearth of water, or lack of water, rather.
We're mining.
Right, so is that basically the point of what you wanted to make today?
This model, I cannot balance groundwater. In any case.
In any case, then there's a variety of reasons that are possible for that, which we may or may not discuss at this meeting. And we've already had some complaints over Ken Coleman report. The one number I might have trouble with at this point in time, Mike, based on my own measurements and field observation, is the loss to gaining streams over stream reaches at 2621. And I'm finding that Mill Creek, at least from Steel Bender to the North Fork is always a losing, well, it gains and loses, but in the bottom line, it lost more water than it had at the Shealy diversion. If it was 3 going out at the Shealy diversion, I got 2.7 on a regular basis coming out the mouth. Okay, so I've got it as a losing stretch from the Shealy diversion on, for my 5 years of data. So sure, runoff may not be the case, but when we're not in a high flow situation, which we are 95% of the time around here, I've got it as a losing reach, which might balance those numbers out. More importantly, though, I would like to comment that comment that if you were to take all the water that they say that Mill Creek is losing, that is supposed to be going into the Glen Canyon group springs, it doesn't add up nearly to what we're taking out of it right now. And our comment before was that the source of the water, my comment before was anyways, that the source of the water for the Glen Canyon group is not that section of stream, it's higher in the mountain. And the data from the USGS indicates that. And there's a paper coming out here in the next 4 months, I hope, by Kip Solomon, that's gonna give us a different water balance for the Glen Canyon group based on integration in the area that could be possible for it to come through in the LaSalle's that are above 7,000 feet. And at some point in time, I like this model that he has for a balance of what's in Mill Creek, but it's not a balance for the Glen Canyon group aquifer where we're getting our water from.
So here's my suggestion about potential follow-on work. I think the biggest problem, we're short on groundwater coming in. It could either be because this groundwater flow in Mill Creek is way too small. And in fact, the whole rest of the area is solid brick wall. Think of this area as being a big fortress in the middle of the desert. It's come rushing down. No water can get in anywhere except through the dam door. In practice, it's not really like that. I think there's 2 problems. A, I think the door is bigger. And B, I think that there's water getting into the groundwater budget area through other places that he has in mind. All the places in here he showed no flow. I suspect that that's not actually true. There is some flow coming in through there. And it's a big linear area. It's a huge area around it, a huge perimeter around the area. And even if the kind of activities and so forth are a lot poorer than they would be in Mill Creek, talking about the area times the activity, that factor is still significant. But I think there's water making in other places that he hasn't got. And a way to get a handle on both those things is to have him, he's already got the tools that he needs. What he wants to do is add up all the precip and recharge rates and so forth, the same thing that he did for the PWB area, and run that calculation for the area, for the watershed above this area. Is that water coming out somewhere?
Yeah. Then,
Which is basically mirroring what Arnie just said.
right.
Right.
Okay, so, other questions, comments, or head scratchings?
One thing I've not been able to figure out is David Kyle took me and Ken up for the tour, and he stood up on the golf course and showed us this place and said, that's the French drain, that's where all the water runs out. And does anybody know, why does he think it all happens right there? Why did it happen all the way down Mill Creek?
Yeah, he's considering the Entrada and the Morrison layer a confining layer, and he's assuming that they run right up into the LaSalle's, and that when the water's coming down underground and on the surface, it hits that Entrada layer, surfaces, goes into the streams, comes down below the Entrada layer, or the Morrison, excuse me, which is, he's assuming is a confining layer, which that is a confining layer. Whether or not it's extensive throughout the area is another question. But he's saying that any groundwater coming down off the LaSalle's is hitting that layer, surfacing, and there are several springs that are showing that type of modality, and coming into the streams, and then when it gets below that into the more fractured sandstone area, it is now allowed to come into the Glen Canyon group. That's why he's saying, that's why he's not counting the stuff in the LaSalle's, because of the confining layer. It's the Moab tongue, that brown layer up there, that we used to call the Moab tongue member of the entrada.
It's a long way from MC7 and MC8 all the way down to the golf course. Wells, I mean, that's miles. I mean, and none of that, that's all the wrong formation, so it can't absorb anywhere. It's got to get to the golf course. It falls in.
I don't think he's saying exactly that. I think that's where you were standing. I was there with him too. That's a place you can see it, right? That's the French drain.
Right.
But the French drain has some linear component to it. It's not just that,
right there.
not just that spot.
And if you go to this map, he actually has that starting where the entrada, where the Morrison actually ends. Okay, that's where, if you look at his boundary area, he's looking at that Morrison formation, that's the confining layer, as the limit, because everything above that supposedly goes into the stream.
And that's the number 5 fractured enhanced matrix, is that the one on here?
It-
Is it on this one or no?
It's in this one.
I just want it so that
As long as people in the room agree, that's all right. That it isn't leaking all the way down, and it's got to be at a certain place. And Chuck is saying, I misunderstood, that it isn't, that area is
It's
all
not
the way.
just that area.
Okay.
It has, I'm not saying extends to the top of the mountain, I'm just saying, it has some linear.
And then I got one other thing, Mike, I can't let go of this. The water, I know these are cubic feet per second, and you explained it to me as a snapshot. But before the Shealy Tunnel, the flow is 9,000 cubic feet per second. We take 3,000, or excuse me, acre feet. It's 9,000 acre feet was the measure that Blanchard got above the Shealy Tunnel. We take 3,000 out, so 6,000 acre feet should be coming out at MC8. And it's not. It's like 3,000 acre feet. So I know the numbers, you can't say, well, that's 3,000 acre feet that are gone, but it's 2 times. I mean, something really funny happens right outside the Shealy Tunnel.
So then we address that offline, I think.
No, I mean, it's a group one, so it's just, we have like 6 other items on the agenda, so I want to make sure.
I'd like to thank, Mike, this is a great job, thank you. Thank you very much.
Mine's gonna take about 3 minutes, so.
Um,
I don't know how much I was budgeted for.
I'd like to say one thing on this.
Yeah,
So since we gave you Ken's report, we thought it was fair to give him your stuff. Sure. He looked at it, we looked at it quickly, it's been a busy week, as you know, you've had a busy week too. Ken can't get back here until like the 3rd week in September, because Paul's overseas. But he'd be happy to come sit down in a work group environment, go through these numbers and try and, because like I said last time, at the last meeting, we're all trying to get the right numbers, the best numbers we can, right? And I think that it's kind of a big group effort, and everybody's got some expertise in this. So if you're willing to, I know your next meeting is September 11th, and Paul's out of, and he wants to be Paul, because Paul's really the groundwater modeling expert. And he doesn't get back in the country until September 11th, but that 3rd week of September,
to the 18th.
yeah, I'm not saying it
There's
needs
a
to be your,
mock meeting that day.
I'm not saying it needs to be your formal meeting or anything, but I'm just throwing it out there that he's happy to come back. They're both happy to come over and try and work this out.
We can either meet privately or in your office or whatever you like.
Yeah,
Whatever.
yeah,
We're all going to go here.
that's right, that's right.
Ted,
Would it be worthwhile, and from what you've talked, does the board think it would be worthwhile to have, say, an hour before the meeting and start a little early? Have all of us involved in that conversation, or do you think that that would be too much or not useful?
We had a meeting with Arnie, Mike, and Denver, and Ken and Mark and I believe, a couple months back, 3 months back. And I thought that was pretty productive, because it was
Yes.
a large enough group, we got diverse opinions and thought processes, but small enough we could keep on track, but.
We keep it kind of small, it goes a lot fast.
I know, but part of my concern is that if all of the different board members don't have the opportunity to participate to some degree, then we have some people understanding better than others, and it doesn't necessarily help us come to consensus on things. So I'm fine with whatever makes sense, but we could, if October 9th worked for them, or maybe you guys meet as a smaller group, then we can meet again and make the meeting a
a smaller group meet, go through the nuts and bolts, if you will, and then come back, try and get Ken to come back to the
Does that
board.
seem worthwhile to the board as a whole? I mean, the reason I'm suggesting this is, in part, we all need to have a better understanding of this, but the other thing that I see in the future is that this is very complicated, and if each of us sitting here behind this table can't say, I can answer that question, we lose credibility. And so that's the piece that, and also it makes it harder if we're going to actually move forward with any kinds of recommendations to council. It makes it harder to have those discussions. So I'm just kind of wondering how we work through this, because a part of this I really like and it's great, but a part of it, and I need to sit with it longer, because I haven't had time to really read through it and really understand it either. But if we all have slightly different understandings of it and slightly different perceptions of what it actually means, that means we're going to have different ideas of the implications in terms of growth and development in the community, which means we're going to look at how we would deal with ordinances or other recommendations very differently. And I'd like to see us try to be on the same page, and I think having the same understanding of the facts is a big part of that. So I don't know if that.
I would love to be a fly on the wall and
And I promise I'll
At the
shut
meeting.
up other than.
So, just to be sure that if you have a separate meeting that's not part of the water board meeting and it's got a quorum of the water board, it needs to be a meeting.
And that was the other reason I was suggesting having it as a workshop ahead of the meeting, so
Sure.
it's just already a part of our official meeting. Not to all those things because it's easier.
I can tell you it won't get done in an hour.
Well, I understand that, and that's where it's like, if it makes them have a smaller group meet, and then we do something where that smaller group can present to the rest of us, because I think that could add clarity for all of us.
I think that's good.
So I don't know if we wanted to tentatively, if you guys are able to meet the third week of September, and then maybe we plan on, in the October meeting, having a workshop as a part of our meeting. Does that seem?
So looking that far, in September is great for me. I'm going to be on vacation in Europe.
I'm gone the last week of September, so I can't be here. So that's why I'm saying part of the regularly scheduled meeting on the 9th, unless you're not going to be back. Are you going to not be back? Is that what you're telling me?
I'll be here in September, but from about October 2nd.
So you're not there for the October meeting, is what you're telling me?
October 9th, you won't
October
be here.
9th is our meet, our first,
Correct, I will
you are
not
not.
be here.
So, okay, so we can't do it on October 9th, unless you have enough, okay, well, let's, I don't know where to go with this then. What
Oh,
is the
yeah,
group
she's
want?
gonna actually use it.
I had like 2
Or maybe just move on to the next topic.
So,
I guess.
well, hold on. There's supposed to be a discussion. I have a couple more things about this before.
Okay, I'm sorry, I
I
didn't
wanted,
realize.
I wanted to quickly talk about.
Sorry, Eve, you gotta.
That's okay. Denver, if you look at figure 9 and see the red Morrison formation he has confining, that's basically the outline where he stops the potential water boundary on the figure 10 in his. So that's how that potential water boundary that's what drove the potential water boundary, was the formation that is supposed to be confining. And then there was a couple of the interesting little facts in here that I thought we might consider. And one is this report by Ford, and I'm looking for it at this point in time, where it says that our houses are really only using 0.42 acre feet per year. That was interesting that he found that number somewhere. Good for Ken doing his research. I'm trying to find what page it was on. But there were a couple of interesting numbers thrown out there that we probably should at least think about where they came from. And where did it go? Where did it go? I've got it outlined here. I mean, I don't know exactly how he used that. Where was it? Oh, it's on page 21. That determined domestic use is 0.42 acre feet per household in the presence of 100. Then he uses that number to generate 63 acre feet per year that he uses domestic consumptive use on the wells that are in the area.
What number did you
.42 acre feet is what this guy Ford came up with.
You know, Artie, you might check with the state on their re-adjudication, because I think there are a lot of wells that were done that they reduced to .45 acre feet per well that had more than that, because they felt that was all they needed for a household.
We've been looking at about 1 acre feet.
It's up there.
At 1 acre feet, and it's .45 for a condominium without landscaping, and these are numbers we got from, at one point in time, from water rights. These numbers right here were the numbers we got, but apparently, we're only using .42 for this guy. And then, the other thing that in this report was that he's got a 10% decline in precipitation in Mill Creek, or the stream flow in Mill Creek. And the VCAP studies basically said, we haven't seen a decrease in annual precipitation in the last 50 years, if I remember that presentation correctly, and we're gonna see it again here in a moment. Our precipitation has been, although it's very variable, and it's gonna get more variable, the average annual precipitation in this area has not changed. Okay?
But in here it says it has decreased by 10%?
In here it says, yeah, we've got a 10% in discharge anyways, in the streams, and we have not seen a 10% decline in precipitation, even through the.
Now, but we were talking about, I think when you came to the meeting, it was in the other room, we were talking about that there was a quote unquote measured decrease in, yeah, so hang on a minute.
So, either way, what I want to do is point out that when we get to the part about VCAPs where there is that presentation, there will be a graph there showing precipitation, and we need to sort that science out also.
I might actually have that.
Okay, well,
I took a few slides from the VCAP.
okay, anyways, those were the only two comments I had at this point in time on that I highlighted in this report that I thought I wanted to talk about. Okay, moving on.
Okay.
Well, how do we want to move forward with this as far as the work that Mike has done, if we're working with Ken and,
The mayor asked me that today.
excuse me?
The mayor said something to me about that today when I just picked up my thing, and I looked at her and I said, well, I can't talk to you right now about that. The city is asking us to come up
I
with.
understand that, so what I'm trying to ask the group right now, because what happened a moment ago is we ended up in this spot of, okay, we can't do anything because certain people can't be here at different meetings. So, how do we want to proceed? Do we want to have Chuck and the engineering department, and I guess a subgroup of this group meet with Ken and Paul, and then figure out a time, which apparently can't be the October meeting, to get the rest of the board up to speed on this, or how do we want to move forward with that? Because I think it's important, we need to not have an answer.
I think Arnie and Mike and Chuck and Ken need to have a meeting because they seem to have the most in-depth ability to handle all this information at one time. And let them have the working meeting when they can get together.
Right.
And then we'll have our whole board hour beforehand. But I think these three guys.
Right, and that's what I was saying, so if that happens on the week of the 18th possibly, or the last week of September, that's great. How do we then bring it back to the rest of the board, since apparently Mike can't be here for October, and I know once we hit November and December, it's hit and miss whether any of us can be here. Because I don't want to end up pushing this into January, I guess, should we just proceed with, Mike, do you trust the others to present to the rest of the board in October? Do you really want to be here for that? How do we want to proceed so that we have a clear path of action? Deadlines, what does the group think?
Well, if I'm not gonna be here and you want to see, I think, yeah, I trust these guys to pass on whatever it is we learn. I'm pretty sure what's gonna happen, Paul's gonna say, well, yeah, Mike has a good point, we could have done that, and he say, oh, Mike, you dumb, why didn't you see this as well? In other words, there's gonna be give and take. Right. Yeah.
So are you comfortable if we decide to put it on the October meeting so that we can make sure we continue? Because my concern is I don't want this to eddy out into something that hangs out for another 4 months before we can pick it up again.
Alternatively, you could just schedule
can call a special meeting, but we have to figure out that date. For me, it can't be the end of September.
Okay.
So unless I come to the meeting you guys have the week of the 18th, which sounds like that's a bad idea. So, what do we, I mean, do we want to hold a special meeting? For me, I'm not around.
What's the matter with having a special meeting on the
There's
19th?
nothing the matter with it, but
How about the 19th?
Are you sure you're gonna get it all done on one day?
I'm not sure, but
Because I don't
is
wanna
there,
call a special meeting we don't need, I guess is my
Well,
issue.
are you around on the 19th, Mike?
Just make sure you work with Summer.
Right.
Mike, are you around on the 19th of September? What's your calendar like?
Yes. I may or may not be available on the 19th, I'm not sure at this point, there's a commitment.
Paul, and Chuck, and his staff.
Paul will be back in country on the 11th, and this is a high priority.
Right.
So they'll make something work that week. As long as we do it in the afternoon, because in the morning, everyone will hopefully be at the new Aggie Boulevard USU ribbon cutting.
On the 18th of the afternoon, the 18th is a comp meeting.
Oh, the 19th.
Oh, okay. I may or may not be in town that afternoon because there's something going on upriver that I don't know yet if I have to be there. But we can do that.
Oh, you got a 3 o'clock meeting, your groundwater monitoring plan.
No, that meeting on the 18th has been canceled. My SMOP meeting on the 18th is still going on. Is 1 to 3 on the 18th.
Oh, the one on the 19th is canceled?
It was actually scheduled for the 18th in the evening, right after the MOP meeting, but either way, it has been canceled.
Okay. So we would have time the afternoon of the 19th.
I've got all afternoon on the 19th.
So do I. Okay.
So is that when you guys are gonna meet or when we're talking about special meeting?
Do you want to have a 2-hour meeting from 1 to 3 and then invite the rest of the board in from 3 to 4?
Your afternoon of the, what's the 17th, 18th look like for you?
Well, the 18th, we have the MOP meeting from 1 to 3. I mean, I could have a meeting in the morning if you wanted to.
That's when the ag thing is, and I'm saying I might not be around on the afternoon of the 19th. That's what I'm saying, we're just kind of in this little eddy, we're in the
We'll
figure
figure it
right
out.
now.
I mean, we're figuring it out, right? It's either I don't know if I can get them to stay here for 3 days, but potentially we do the 17th to work for you guys.
We should be able to resolve 90% of our questions.
So what I think I'm hearing is we need to have Ken and Paul here for the whole group meeting, or is that something that you and Arnie could present to the group? I guess that's the.
No, I don't think we need to have Ken and Paul here, though they'd be happy to be here.
Right.
But I think your proposal maybe works, which if I follow it, Arnie, is let's meet from 1 to 3, the work group, and then meet with the board from
3 to 4.
3 to 4. I mean, it's up to you guys, you're the board. That's why I understood what you were saying.
Denver,
I think
John?
that works.
Denver, John? Mike, that works for you?
Yeah, you bet.
And I don't know if it works for me because I have a prior work commitment that may or may not be true. So we'll just play it there. And you guys can proceed without me.
Word group, Chuck, as you anticipate being in the office?
I'm scheduling my
Once I get
entire
that down,
Thursday
I'll send an
afternoon.
invitation. How's that?
So
I'll
Chuck,
send it in.
you're gonna book a room?
I'll book a room and send an
Okay.
invitation.
All right.
I'm doing it right now.
Can I ask if we go that route since I may not be able to make that? That we put something together that can be something written down that other people can read and actually understand without needing an hour-long meeting? Is that gonna be feasible when this is all said and done or not?
We're meeting from 1 to 3 as a work group and then going and talking with the board.
Right.
Maybe we don't have time.
No, I mean ultimately,
Oh,
because I may not be able to make the
I-
special meeting.
I
that you guys are talking
suspect
about.
I wouldn't be surprised if there's revisions to the Coleman report,
Right.
and I think that would be the document. And there may be something that the board wants to do with that data.
Yeah, Carl, I'll take that. I gotta get the document, whatever we learned.
Okay, but I think we need it in a format that doesn't take an hour of our meeting to wait for. It needs to be something that we can. Well, yeah, because we aren't gonna be able to take this much time all the time for this. I mean, we're already.
Well, we don't have to, once you guys understand what I've done here, we don't have to do this.
hotels are only using 16%. So this, there's sort of this urban myth of the hotels are stealing all the water, let's not build any more hotels. And so basically, when I did all this number crunching, it was like, no, actually, residents are even 51% and hotels are at 16. So then I went and I actually got all the meters from the hotels, not all the hotels. I just took 22 hotels. I took a full year of data, so we had seasonal information. I normalized it all by how many hotel rooms each of these hotels had, and then I compared it against the state estimate. And 21 out of the 22 hotels were under the state estimate. So the assumption that, well, it's really dry, maybe our hotels are using more than the state, maybe in Moab it's different than Park City, but the state estimate is really pretty good. And the one that was over, I think, actually might have a leak. Because it doesn't.
And what, were these varying sizes of hotels that you chose?
Yeah, so it was from, it was a range.
So how do you deal with occupancy, different average over annual occupancy kind of thing?
I didn't look at occupancy. That's a good question.
Which? So you're saying that the number we've been using, 0.36 acre feet per motel room, might be a little high for what is actually being used.
Yeah.
And the question was a little more involved in that. And I'm glad you found that number out for us, what we're actually using, because that's why this Moab water fact sheet is supposed to be about us.
Yeah.
And so if we're putting out 0.36, we've got some actual numbers to back it up again. I sent you that email that Mark Stilson sent me, which was very convoluted. And he says he gets his numbers from X, Y, and Z, and he didn't actually tell me what he uses for a hotel room, but basically told me to go read a bunch of documents and figure it out. And I thought to myself, that Mark, you should know the answer to that question. It was the Stilson factor. Anyways, then we also had a conversation about ERCs and that the
ERUs.
That when they're building these hotels, they use a larger number than 0.36 is what we thought we had heard. Did you find out any information on that?
In the planning office, you mean?
So we decided that the planners had put in, so that when they size the pipes, they size the pipes as a 0.8 of an equivalent residential unit. Is that true? You're here.
I wasn't paying attention, Arnie told me. To your question, what was the question?
The question is when they're building these hotels, what equivalent resident unit do they use for each hotel room?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know the answer to that right off the top. We model each hotel differently because so we take the whole hotel. We don't just take the rooms because some have kitchens, some don't, some have bathrooms. The number varies. I can find out for you. That doesn't sound far off. It's probably between 0.6 and 1.
In reality, they're just using,
Actually, maybe I have that number. Go ahead.
in reality, they're using less than 0.36 acre feet, or if 1 acre foot is a residential unit, they're using less than that. But that's all, it's just information at this point in time. We're not making decisions based on that.
And can I ask about,
I didn't average it out, but I should average, so I could average those 22 out and see what our number really is.
is the number of overnight accommodations that are actually more than just hotel rooms, meaning condos and homes that are nightly rentals? Do you think that there's a significant number of those that would skew that that acre feet use?
So that's two different, I'm hearing two different questions. When she has that slide up there, overnight accommodations, that includes all of our overnight accommodations, whether they're residential units or actually hotel rooms. But we were wondering about a hotel room. That was our big one. How much is a hotel room actually using in terms of acre feet? And when we're planning on where we're going in the future. And the number we've come up with at this point in time is less than .36, but .36 is a darn good estimate.
Yeah. You know, it'd be nice to look at the,
I,
just the overnight separately too, because I know Dina had, you know, questions about it, and she thinks a lot of those property managers aren't really managing them very well. So that'd be a nice,
Well, it seems like so many of the nightly accommodations are 3-bedroom, 2-bath homes, you know, condos or houses. It's a significant number in the county at least, maybe not inside the city limits. And I think that in the big picture, when we talk about countywide and citywide, the future of overnight accommodations, it's not just hotels, it's the whole picture.
yeah. All right, I'll add that in. I mean, I'll look at that data and come back to the group. But then, you know, besides doing that, what I tried to do too is just take the top, like, 25, like, water users and, say, okay, so who is using a lot of the water? So that water truck stop that we have at King Creek, that is really high. And I know former Mayor Dave, it was this pet peeve of like, why are we using all this water? And I didn't realize the amount until I put it in the spreadsheet. Gas station, I don't name the gas station, but gas stations, and I was trying to brainstorm with Eric, because I go, why would a gas station use so much water? Because I had somebody from the public come in the other day and say, you know how much, you know, water gas stations use and all, and she, you know, sort of went off, and I was like, oh, I'm not really sure about it. I was kind of
Everybody who
surprised.
gasses up uses the bathroom.
Yeah,
But if you're traveling through, it could be 4 people in your car
yeah.
using the bathroom, right? I mean, everybody's just going in and.
So, yeah, that was in the top, 20, and then the schools were in there, so I definitely need to get over to both of the
Some of them
schools.
may have ice machines too. Some gas stations
yes, they do.
create their own ice, which is,
Yes, they
A
do.
nightmare.
which is water. That's
Yeah,
all it's getting at,
yeah.
yeah.
I mean, energy-wise, it's a nightmare. So
Yep.
that's one of the things that I talk to hotels about a lot.
And the school's landscaping, there's a lot, the way things are watered is not.
So can you take it back, go back one slide, please? One more back. So we've got cemeteries and parks, and commercial and institution, is institutional considered our schools?
Yep, and let's see what else is institutional. I think the, like, Murray is institutional.
It is an institution.
I mean, this is therapy for some people.
No, I'm sorry, that, I misspoke. They're commercial.
It's just the schools.
Well, institutional is the government also.
Yeah, we're institutional.
We're institutional.
They have
There's this other thing,
Yeah, government buildings.
there's UDOT.
We went over this with Levi, one of the institutional. I think it's the government buildings.
Okay, so
including schools.
they're in the institutional one, and it doesn't surprise me that they're in the top 20 uses. So they would not be in cemetery parks, and they do have our fields that are a great asset to our community. I mean, I'm sorry, we need a football field, we need a softball field.
They get used.
They get
It's not
used.
like the churches are institutional.
Yes, so I understand that. I had a question for you. Can you go
Yeah,
forward?
churches are institutional.
Can you go forward 3 slides again?
Yep.
Another question I had on this. Nope, back one. Not that one. One up above there. That one, no, go forward 3 slides.
Just
Not-
What did it look like?
which one?
The one that had the body uses on there, I had a question on that. Not that one, the next one. Not the next one, not this one, the next one. Water trucks. I thought when, in the 2014 Water Conservation Report, that really the amount of acre feet the water trucks were getting from the city wasn't that much water. In gallons, it looked like a lot, but in acre feet, it did not look like that much. There were the numbers, and that's why I'm wondering about the numbers. In acre feet, I thought it was about, I don't have that book with me, but I remember making that comment as a comment on the water
Well, there was
conservation
that-
report, was that we put those numbers in gallons instead of acre feet, and they looked really big. When you looked at them in acre feet, they were really rather small.
But there was that whole period of time where all the road construction up on ice guy for all the wells and everything that was using a tremendous amount of water, but that use ended. That's my recollection. It might be correct.
I can check, I can
what-
check the 2014.
What year are you looking at?
This was, the end of, 2017 to 2018.
Okay, so it's more recent than the water conservation document, and then those numbers may have changed.
So I wonder if it's the increased oil and gas industry usage. You know, that's.
Well, that's actually been a decrease.
Well, but and the increased construction, I mean, my understanding, that's the impetus for trying to put in the water
It is.
station on the Colorado.
It is.
Yeah.
Which I think has come to a screeching halt, but I was told, I don't hope not, I haven't heard that.
Okay, anyways,
Well, you know what I have to check is that I wrote that grant, and, it was gonna be with the county, and it was gonna be with the, Grand Water and Sewer District, and then when it came up to have a match, and then no one had budgeted for that, so that was an issue.
That's the problem.
so the environmental work's done on that. The grant was available, and we didn't come up with the match.
How much was the match? Do you remember? 75? I remember it was 150 total, but I could be wrong.
No, I think that was about right. So yeah, that's what happened with that. So it's not, you know,
Fun intended.
That benefits the city almost more than the county. The county would really have too much that they have to gain from building that pump station. As far as water sales, I don't know how much GWSSA sells, but we're the ones who are giving out our culinary water instead of river water.
A lot of those-
I think it was concern in Dana's. So I don't know on the street.
A lot of times, we just have to eat and do the match, because the county just, they have trouble spending money sometimes.
Okay. Go ahead, Abe. I didn't mean to sidetrack you too much.
No worries. The only other thing I had about, oh yeah, so Grand Oasis was really high, but then I started to, think about how many trailers were there, and then
Pretty dense.
actually, what?
Pretty dense in there.
It is, but they came out, it wasn't as bad as, just looking at the raw numbers, I was like, wow, a lot of water, but then, yeah, I talked to Eric and VR, and I was like, yeah, they're not too bad. Okay, and that's all I have on that one. I just have a few notes from our recap.
Thanks.
Any more questions or comments for Rosemary?
So we're not changing anything on our water board fact sheet at this point in time, and we feel justified with .36, no matter what Mark Stilson has to say.
I think, the next meeting, I'll come back with our actual number. We could maybe put that in parentheses, like this is what the state uses, this is what our actual were for this year. And then I'll also get the data for the, overnight, the other type of overnights, like condos. Because I think really what this whole moratorium, they want to say, okay, so the question came up last night, well, what kind of business do we want to have? And so,
So for the next agenda, you needed an item on the next agenda to follow up with. Okay, for the next meeting. Okay. Yeah.
I have another little brief staff report.
Okay.
Okay, I went to the latest U.S. Forest Service planning meeting with Oscar, and he's taking on that role for the city to ride herd on the forest plan process. And the draft forest plan will be coming out in September. And there's a pre-feedback stage that I think is happening very soon, and I can send you all an email if I think of it, of like when that period is. And because Oscar's so new, if you all have an interest in providing feedback on it, feel free to, one way to be sure to get your thoughts known to the forest planners is to contact Bob O'Brien or Dave Early, because they're representing Castle Valley and they go to all the meetings and are really active. And then and work with Oscar too, but then, you know, our watershed is in what's considered now it's draft, but the Moab Special Management Area is part of the new forest plan. And what's unclear to me is, the role that status has for, the future of grazing in our watershed. So, you know, there are lots of cattle up there right now, and I personally don't know the science about what impact that has. So, Brian Murdoch, who is, works for the Forest Service here, he's very happy to meet with folks from the city to talk about any facets of the plan, really. I mean, he has his certain specialty that he does, but you can set up a local meeting with him. He'd be happy to, and talk about the implications of the draft plan and what suggestions or comments the city as a group may want to make on that draft. Because it's really, even though they won't actually publish the plan until way after the next presidential election, but the draft is happening right now.
Would it seem to make sense to ask Brian to come to a mock meeting and talk to us?
A mock meeting or this meeting?
A mock meeting.
That might be a good
Yeah.
venue, yeah.
I think mock would be a good venue.
Maybe I'll try to, do you have his contact information?
I do, I
yeah.
can get it to
Can
you.
you get it to me?
And invite Oscar. I think Oscar's starting to go to those.
Yeah, he did, last one.
Yeah, I'll come to the last one.
Great.
Thank you.
Okay. What else we got as far as any more board or staff reports?
Are we on staff reports? Well, we had that wonderful tour the other day. I may as well just mention that. There was water conservation projects in there.
Yes.
That
Go for it.
That went very well. Apparently what I did differently than other watershed coordinators had done is I had somebody from the project at every single project site. And that went over very well with the people that showed up.
Good.
Okay, so we're on tap to be the big money in 2019 or 2020.
So what Artie's referring to is talking about, for those of you who might not know, is funds that come through the EPA non-point source pollution program to a variety of projects in Moab, ranging from animal feedlot operations to some revegetation along the creeks to some spring exclosures up on the mountain to some seeding and other work in Castle Valley. I think that summarizes it. There's a little more to it than that. And this meeting was actually quite important, getting them to see what we've been doing in this region, because a large chunk of money, $500,000 is coming our way to this region in 2020. So proposals are due, and we've talked about this, so I sent you an email about that. So proposals will be due in March.
Probably, yes. It used to be April, it is March. If it's in the Moab Area Watershed Partnership, it needs to go through the MOP in March.
In March of 2020. So the good part about that is there's some good work going on. And so having these guys get a good impression of it is.
Yeah, that went really well, apparently.
Did you get any ideas from them whether they had any like special areas they like to see grants in?
Well, Jody's concerned about feedlots throughout the state, but we don't really have a lot of feedlots in this area.
What is a pretty block?
Except Castle Creek.
Castle Creek at the
Are
river.
animals too close together?
Yeah.
That one.
It doesn't have to be very many. I can find an apple-capo, an animal feed, I can find an animal feed operation. It can be as few as 10 cows, I believe. As few as 10, I believe.
There's one right up by Kent's Lake.
But it also is about it being near creeks in particular and things
Yeah,
like that.
my point was, we don't,
Yeah.
come to the MOP meeting if you want to talk about projects, but my point was that the tour went really well, okay? That's what I wanted to report to this group.
Cool. Okay. Any other board or staff reports? Seeing none, we'll move on to other business, and we are going to the VCAP discussion and possible action the PowerPoint in their emails, and I believe we have some slides from it here as well. I don't know who's doing that, if it's Arnie or Rosemary or both.
I wasn't gonna leave it, I mean, the report, they're gonna have a report for us in a couple of weeks, but, I just thought we would just go over a couple of them.
There's two parts to this. One was climate.
Yeah.
And that needs to be known by everybody, how climate is going to affect our water resources, and that, we have that in front of us right now. And the VCAPS process, well, what are we gonna do about it, and that report will be forthcoming. There were a couple ideas that were really nice. I heard on Friday, wasn't actually there, but let's just do what's gonna happen with climate at this point in time, and when we get the report from them, we'll have another report to this group on the VCAPS. Does that make reasonable to everybody? Okay.
So this, in the VCAP, this is one of the things they were telling us about. They were talking about temperature projections, and so they were giving us this low and high numbers. But then this week, I don't know if anybody else saw it. I'll send it out to the group. There was just an article in the Washington that basically said Grand County is one of like the top 5 counties in the whole nation that'll be the most affected by climate change. Yeah, it was like the temperature. So it was interesting because I went back to this, and these guys were going, oh, it's somewhere between like 2 and 4, and then this article that just came out in the Washington Post said it was like, did anybody else read it? It was 2.5.
It's 2.5.
Yeah, 2.5. And so, yeah, it
2.5.
was saying how, yeah, we're just in this sweet spot
For temperature change.
for increased temperature changes.
That's probably based on like weather models,
Yeah.
stuff like that.
That's why we're special in so many ways.
We are so special. Anyways, talk.
Okay, so,
So for VCAP, I mean, Mike was there, Arnie was there Thursday. They basically were giving us projections about days over 105 degrees. One of the things I was surprised about, and I don't know whether it was on Thursday or Friday, but they were saying extreme cold is one of the projections for our area too, which I hadn't.
and a number of years ago, I talked to the climate scientists at the time about that, and it's because of the winter weather patterns and the troughs that bring the inversions. And what happens is they get more entrenched. And so in 2011, we had, I think it was 2011 or 2010, when sewer lines were freezing all over town, because we had something like 10 weeks of -10 and lower at night. It was crazy. And so I know people whose sewer lines froze. So he was giving a presentation in the conference I was at, and we had a chat about,
What year was that?
We had,
2010, 2011.
I can't remember the exact year, but we had a regional inversion.
Yeah.
So there was clouds
Yeah.
up at, like, you had to go over 9,000 feet to see the sun.
So even at the island sky, there was no sun. Yeah, it was crazy.
Anyway.
Sounds like Salt Lake.
No, worse. Anyway, yeah, so that's why they're saying that.
We were colder than Durango that year.
Yeah, it was awful.
Yeah, well, that was kind of shocking to me.
So one question I have looking at this with the water budget and the precipitation numbers, I'm assuming these precip numbers reflect all elevations in the county and not just the lower elevations, because in town, it's not 19%. Like, that's way high, so that wouldn't be a drought year in town. 19 inches, sorry.
So this was Grand County.
So that's including higher elevations.
That's
Yeah.
including
Yes.
he did similar to what Ken Combe did, and
Okay.
integrated over the entire area,
Okay.
what they got. And we average about 19 inches in Spanish Valley all the way to the headwaters. It was supposed to be about Spanish Valley, but I believe he averaged Grand County. I remember him saying that now.
Because
It was
here
Grand
it says
County.
Grand County,
It
which
says
would be
Grand
a whole
County.
lot of.
It was
because in
Grand
mountains,
County.
It's much higher, but in town, we're talking 6 to 12.
That's correct.
Okay,
So
just wanted to make sure.
he integrated over the entire area.
Okay. I'll keep going.
brought forward. So go back to the, I think, 3 slides again, excuse me. That one right there, that one right there.
The water slide.
The water slide.
Go
The
ahead.
water slide. The point with this was that in our severe drought, that although we received 58% normal of our precipitation, which was the driest year on record, because evapotranspiration is still gonna take the majority of that, we ended up being 23% of normal of our stream runoff. So the gist is that if we get a low water year, most of the trees, they're okay, but the amount of water we actually have left to use decreases by more than the percent of normal. Okay, can you guys get that idea at this point in time? Okay, the other thing that we don't have a slide of, which I thought was interesting, dealing with the Cancun report, was that they looked at rainfall, and our precipitation doesn't appear to be changing with any of the climate models. If the form of the precipitation may change, we're going to get more rain and less snow, and the implications of that are difficult to tell in our area, because we're taking water out of the streams in the winter and into Ken's Lake. It's not like we're waiting for spring to fill it up, although we do fill it up in spring when it does come down because we got more precipitation. But if it rains in the wintertime, GWSSA is taking that water. Okay? So the implications of and whether or not it's saturating through we're getting more recharge with snow or rain, because our geology is different, is also another question that hasn't been answered either. So whether or not the snow, rain is going to affect our water budget is the question that it hasn't been answered at this point in time. However, one thing that was said in there that is not in these slides, when the temperatures go up by 3, 4, or 5 degrees, we are going to see a 18% decrease in the amount of runoff we actually have.
How many?
The evapotranspiration, your phytophytes are going to be using more water to make up for the heat. And so we're going to end up with 18% less water coming off into the streams and or possibly recharging than we are currently having by 2050.
By 2050.
I think that was the quote.
And that's what the state water engineer
That's
basically
what NOAA
said.
said. That's what the Western Water Resources representative, Seth, who did the analysis for us. So the kicker here is that in 2050, we will actually have 18%, on an average year, we will have 18% less water than we have right now.
And I'd like to look at the sources for this article, because if the article is, well-researched, then,
It'd be more.
because his was like 2%, and they're saying it's gonna be 2.5.
So then finally, the other thing I took from VCAPS was that we're going to see more extreme weather patterns. And that just makes sense to me, and we all probably know that, but the point is we will get we'll get years with lots of water, but we're also going to see more extreme water years. So last year was an example of that. It was the driest year we've ever recorded. And we're going to see more of that.
And the winter was also interesting because had the snow melted differently, it would have been, it was this comparable snow to 84,
Yes.
which was very high.
Yes, and if it would have melted differently, we would have had
Would have had big water.
big water. And unfortunately, we were fortunate in that aspect. So the fluctuations are going to get bigger, okay? The average annual precipitation is going to stay the same, but our fluctuations are going to get bigger. The temperatures are going to go up, and on an annual basis, if you average it all out, we're going to have 18% water less to use than we do right now.
I think another piece that I caught out of what sent of the whole presentation is that the drying effect is going to be important as well with a whole lot more time where you're going to have plants hit a melting point because you're going to have an overall drying of the soil, which we very much experienced last year.
Acidification.
So are you
The report, I've sent Seth's slides to Eve. You got them, those,
That's what I printed out.
that was printed out, I believe, did I send them to everybody, or did I send them to Eve to send to everybody? I don't know what I did.
I don't remember ever seeing that.
I want to get it to Ken Call, like the paper or whatever, you know.
I will, at this point in time, even if I didn't send you that, I will
Send it again? Well, and just
Okay.
to say, tomorrow's my last day, so send it today.
Arnie, I'll just forward, I have it right here.
I'm about to get it too, I've got it right here too.
And you could send it directly to Ken.
Okay,
You have Ken's email.
all right, so any more on DCAPs?
I just want to say, I thought it was really great to have Sam Holland and Grand County and the city in the room, looking at a water from a watershed.
And the BLM and the Forest Service.
Yeah.
That was a good, and we didn't, nobody got angry.
No, it's very civil, and that's the way we need to
Yes.
move forward.
All right, we have 12 minutes left if we want to end on time. We have the Moab water facts. Do we want to be talking about revisions? Do we want, I know we talked about that Eve and, not Eve, Rosemary's going to bring some added information to the next meeting so we can re-examine some of the annual use estimates based on what Mike's been talking about. Do we need to be re-examining any of these groundwater figures or other things? What do we want, what's the pleasure of the group on this topic at the moment?
Well, I'd like to get away from garbage and trash, yeah. In other words, whether, I'm waiting to come up with an acceptable report from Mr. Call and Mr. Call, and then try to reconcile the two things.
I think we've done the best we can with the information we had. I think it's not total garbage, but unless you disagree.
It seems to me that the engineering department is going to be coming up with a couple of corrections, but they don't have them yet.
Okay,
Is that fair?
In progress.
so should we carry this over to the next meeting?
Yeah, and if you guys could just make sure that that, like, at least Rosemary and Cara get those new facts, because I forget if I have the actual document, or you have it.
Yeah, I have the latest one.
So that it can be integrated, hopefully before the next meeting.
So that would be September 11th. Next meeting, I believe. Is that?
Yeah, it sounds right.
We're almost done, I think.
Okay.
Most of the water facts.
Yeah, we've been trying to get them done. We have some comments, but we could, when did you want to play?
Next meeting?
Oh, yeah,
But send them to Rosemary and Cara.
absolutely.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, so we're going to then, do we want to talk about this at all, or just put that off to the next meeting?
I'd be in favor of putting it off to the next meeting.
Okay, just want to make sure I don't miss anything. Water budget and development implications memo discussion and possible action.
I'm not sure what that.
Not sure what
That was just a joke.
So Eve's parting shot.
No, it was just, so just to be clear, and it's my instructions for my replacement, if it's not clear that there's going to be an action item, it'll say possible action, just because you can't take action if it's not on there.
Yes.
So that's just always the default.
Yep.
And it sort of goes along with the water facts, I think. I don't think that we'll revise that memo until the water facts have been revised, so that, and it seems like if there is a revision to that memo to council, you'll just want to, those meetings with Ken Colm are probably going to inform that. So that's all.
Okay.
Ken was appreciative of Mike's work, and other things have come up, so I think we might, Chuck would likely see another revision.
Yes,
Okay.
I think I said that when you were out of the room.
Oh, okay, sorry.
So we're
So
good.
there's a chance that this won't be as Mike so eloquently called it garbage.
Well, that's too severe, all right? My long shot.
That's what he said.
I'm not putting the minutes.
Huh?
I'm not putting that in the minutes.
Maybe I'll say differential garden and differential garden. Yeah, I mean, any changes, I want any changes I make to be in the positive direction.
I think there's a really important thing. I think Mike has figured out the template that we need to use to
Right.
look at water. And I think it took us a year to get there, and it's a lot of hard work. And I gotta say some kind words over Mike and everybody that did this. I mean, a year ago, we were kind of flailing, and now we have an idea where we're going. I think it's, you know.
You can have another piece of cake, Mike. It's
So,
easy.
so to recap, just to make sure we have agenda items noted in the minutes for the next meeting, we are going to have the Moab Water Facts, we're gonna have information from Rosemary and Engineering Department on this. We are going to, are we gonna talk about VCAPs some more or no?
Will that report be done by then?
If they get paid.
So we
Yes.
should have VCAPs on there again as
Yeah.
well. Should we also have more discussion of Mike's work and Ken's work, or should we wait until the next meeting?
No, I'm waiting for Paul to show up.
Yeah, let's wait till.
Okay, so we will not have that on the next agenda, that's okay with everybody? As long as that's good with everybody? Okay. Are we talking more about, you were talking about some additional information about overnight accommodation? Is that just related to the water facts?
Just to the water facts,
Okay.
so that's, yeah. You
Are
already
there
covered it.
any other items that we know of now that should be on that agenda?
It's, I'm going to urge Oscar to have something about the forest plan, but I believe that when the next meeting happens, that will be the open opportunity so that if the folks here have comments for the forest plan and you want it to come from the city, it should probably be agreed upon here.
So we should include the forest plan review and comments and possible action items?
Yeah.
Okay,
So
so that would be
that's
included.
gonna come before the mock meeting, but that's the way it is.
Yeah. Anything else that we're missing that needs to be, I mean, I know more can come up, I just wanted anything that came up today or that we know needs to be on that agenda.
You guys talk about having another meeting with like Denver and.
We got it.
Yeah,
We did that, yes.
yeah, that's in the works.
You gonna take that from me?
Okay. All right, then we can entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll motion we adjourn.
All right, I think I
Wait.
don't see,
Who seconded? Mike? He's always
I seconded.
second.
he wants to get out of here.
It's not even 4 o'clock.
Hey,